Sin City, USA plays host to tonight's contest, and with 5 races left in Season 7, these drivers will be sinning aplenty here at Las Vegas. Hi, hello, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for Race 7 of the Fuel Grand National Series, the Desert Derby, presented by Pets.com. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's live intercast on the North American Sim Racing Network. My name is Trey Wright, once again joined alongside the Colonel Caleb Rose. And with 5 races left in the season, we come to a track that was as wild as can be back in September for the Sportsman race. Tonight, Caleb, we might see a crazier race with these Grand National cars.
Definitely excited to absolutely crazy race here a little while back in the Sportsman series, and oh boy, this is definitely going to be a very, very interesting race here this time around as well, here with these Grand National cars. Of course, like you mentioned, it's got a couple more races left in the season, starting to wind down. The anticipation is rising, and the patience is starting to wear thinner and thinner, so could definitely play quite a lot here into this race tonight. We'll have to end up seeing how it'll all play out, but I'm definitely very, very excited to see how it'll all go down here in Sin City.
It's definitely going to be a very, very fun one for this evening. There's a look at Zach Rogers, current point leader for this evening's race, coming into this evening's race. Got a big points lead over Vincenzo Focusato coming into race number 7 of the evening. There's a look at Vincenzo Focusato's number 37 machine. Get a look at all the cars out on track with about a minute to go in practice for tonight. And if you did not catch the Sportsman race that we had a couple of months ago, rather about a month and a half ago at this time, oh boy, let us first introduce you to the insanity that was the Max Buchanan Foundation 100 all the way back in September. All came down, it was just parity upon parity in that race, and it all came down to nearly a last lap pass as Apollo Hyde was able to hold off Blake Warren to win the Max Buchanan Foundation 100. But we're here tonight for the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com. A great race for a lot of great drivers here this afternoon. There's a look at Tret Talker. I did not expect to see I didn't expect to see the 28 up into the air like that. That's Zane Smith on steroids. We got 30 seconds to go before qualifying, so I think that's definitely going to set the stage on how insane this race is going to be here tonight, Caleb. It's going to be a fantastic, and it's going to be a fun one, coming off of the heels of an incredible race we had last week in Mid-Ohio.
I think that might be a pretty decent indicator. Don't usually see that every day, but oh man, online physics are just so much fun, and I definitely think it'll be a very, very fun race here tonight. Like I said, with all the factors in place, and then like you mentioned, after the crazy race last time out at Mid-Ohio, that was also a very parity-filled race. We saw Jolene Sims there go to victory lane, get their first career win here, I believe, in the Grand National Series. So I have to see what we see this time around, but like I said, I'm definitely expecting a very, very fun one here from Vegas.
We definitely are, and that was a dogfight to the end between Jolene Sims and the 88 of Zach Rogers. Rogers' streak of wins here at the Fuel Racing League ending at 7 in a row. Rather, make that 8 in a row, I believe. Won the first 5 races, then 2 races last season. So, yeah, looking to get back in the win column, and just a complete dogfight of a finish between those two drivers. But taking a look at the point standings, of course, Zach Rogers leads the way by 154 points over Vincenzo Focusato. Nicky Conti is up to 3rd in the standings. This is yet another race that Apollo Hyde has missed. It's going to be the 3rd race that Hyde has missed this season. Of course, a lot going on in her personal life, with just a bunch of stuff going on. A lot busier than a lot of us here being able to, but we know that she's watching the races from home, so Hyde has slipped down to 4th for the defending champion, RJ Bishop, rounding out the top 5. Jolene Sims, Emmy Schizzato, Ike Durbin, Tyler Stallhood, and Hafiola Sorensen, rounding out the top 10 for this point standings, in Trek Togger and Dunn LaPrade. Right now, rounding out the top 12. Qualifying is underway. Right now, Rich Roy, top of the point standings. or rather top of the qualifying pylon. Did not take long for Zach Rogers to immediately jump to the top. The only car that has put down a lap so far of sub 31 seconds, a 30.658. And again, with no Jelaine Sims or Apollo Hyde in the field, I think this is going to be a race that Zach Rogers is definitely going to be the class of the field. The question is, Caleb, who's going to run in second, because we have got a smattering amount of talent here this evening like we always do.
Absolutely. We've seen a lot of great drivers here all throughout this season. Definitely still have a lot of great ones here in contention tonight. Like you said, Focusado there in that battle there for the points lead. He's in this race right now, second on the pylon, just barely not quite getting a sub 30, but it's still close. 31.044 there for Focusado. Also got Nicky Conti, Tyler Stallhood, Drew Fast. Still got a lot of great drivers here in this field, so it's definitely going to be a very, very entertaining race. But yeah, Zach Rogers right now looking like the class of the field here in qualifying, as he's a couple tenths clear here from the rest of the field.
Yeah, we got 16 cars on the entry list for this evening, about the same amount that we had for the Sportsman race a little while ago. Got 8 seconds remaining in qualifying. I think it's safe to say that Zach Rogers is going to be back at the pole position for a dominating 30.658 second lap, and everybody else will be qualifying towards the tail end of the 16 cars on the grid here this evening. Rogers at the pole position. And we'll go over the starting lineup with about 5 minutes to go before we kick this race off. Zach Rogers and Vincenzo Focusado in row number 1, Nicky Conti and Tyler Stallhood in row 2, Drew Fast and RJ Bishop in row 3, Blake Warren and Ike Durbin in row 4, Rich Roy and Kenny Campos, with Kenny Campos sporting a brand new number here this evening. They round out row number 5 to round out the top 10, Brendan Whitford and Trek Togger. Round out row number 6. They were the last 2 cars to put down a lap. And then Emmy Schizzato and Tim Galley Jr. making his return to the Fuel Racing League. More on Tim Galley Jr. later on. They will be in row numero 7, and Corbin Wentz and Dunn LaPrade will be in row 8 for the 16 cars making a start here this evening, as we get a good look at that news numbered 006 car for Buddy Campos. Glad to see him getting a nice paint scheme out on track. Blake Warren in the number 12 machine coming out here for happy hour, and yet to see the pole sitter out on track for happy hour, but flashing through the field. There's a look at Tim Galley Jr., that Tim Galley Racing number 39 machine. Of course, this is the unofficial animal characters themes race, so a lot of new paint schemes out here. Got the number 131 machine of Brendan Whitford in the Bananazon Shipping Dodge Charger for Red Vox Racing. I think he and Tyler Stallhood might be the only cars that are adhering to the unofficial theme. But 3 minutes to go here in happy hour. Caleb, what are you expecting from these guys at a track like Las Vegas that's pretty technical at times? And, you know, this is the old version of Las Vegas where it's not as steeply banked. It's going to be quite a challenge for some of these drivers.
Yeah, definitely, like you mentioned, the banking here, this version of Las Vegas, a lot flatter than a lot of modern day versions, so definitely going to play into a little bit of the technicality we might see with this racetrack here tonight. Definitely going to race a lot different than the usual 1.5 miles, so we'll definitely have to see how that'll come into play, but definitely saw a lot in that Sportsman race there about 1.5 months ago, and if any of that translates here tonight, we could definitely expect a very, very interesting race, but we'll have to see how different this race will be, of course, with the Grand National Series cars and with it being an open setup. Might be a bit different in some ways, might be a bit of the same. We'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out, though.
We do know that Zach Rogers is wired in right now as we take a look at the race analysis. It's going to be 67 laps here at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. 16 cars on the entry list and the point of no return. 5 laps to go, so a lap number 63. 12 degrees of banking in the corners of the basically a retextured version of the 2003 Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And we're going to see about 1.5 seconds of tire fall off and a pit run about at the halfway point in the race. Got 32 to 36 laps, so these guys might try and split this race in half. 100 miles on the docket for this evening's race, and like we said, track map, you know, it's basically your cookie cutter mid-2000s track. It's the same thing, it's the same shape as Kentucky, Kansas, a little bit of Chicagoland, sans the curved back straightaway, but this is your run-of-the-mill tri-oval SMI track, not the quad oval like we typically see with Atlanta and Charlotte and a couple other tracks. I'm still not calling the Atlanta Motor Speedway Echo Park, just like I'm not calling Worldwide Technology, or just like I'm not calling Gateway Worldwide Technology, and a couple of other just weird tracks names here. But of course, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, there ain't no change in this. They might change the name. It'll be Sin City USA Motor Speedway, but a great racing facility, and we're going to see a heck of a race here this evening, that's for sure.
Definitely. Real ones remember the Jeff Gordon International Speedway.
I prefer Jeff Gordon International Speedway over ISM Raceway, personally. What other weird you know, up until probably a few years ago, I didn't realize that Sonoma, when it was named Infineon, I didn't realize Infineon was a company. When I first got NASCAR The Game 2011 as a second grader on the Wii, I was like, oh, Infineon, that's the name of the track. I didn't know any Sears Point or anything like that.
Another NASCAR 2011 on the Wii, Truther. Let's go.
Such a great game. Such a classic game, in my opinion. Now, NASCAR The Game Inside Line on the Wii, that was a total potato.
Those games have a soft spot for me, because like those games is what got me into NASCAR.
Oh, 100%. Now, Inside Line, you could barely steer that game. There were those frame rate issues, just like we kind of might be having here. I cannot wait to get a new computer, personally, because might drop the frame rate under a caution, because we know that there are some encoder issues, but it doesn't look like we're dropping any frames on stream. But hey, we'll cross that bridge if we get to it, and just like with last week, we're going to wait until the end to review any sort of incidents in case we do have some sort of crash. Of course, NR might be just having a couple of issues here in terms of that, but we're on the back straightaway. We're ready to turn them on and grid them up here, going down for 100 miles outside of Sin City. Zach Rogers has got the pole position for this evening's race, and we'll send it downstairs for the starting command for this evening's race for the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com.
Drivers, start your engines.
We're ready to go. Here in tonight's race in Sin City, USA, Zach Rogers, Vincenzo Focasato in row number 1, Tyler Stallhood and Nicky Conti in row 2, Drew Fast and RJ Bishop in row number 3. Caleb, who is your pick to win tonight's race for the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com?
Well, honestly, I think I got to go with the Bulldog here, Zach Rogers. It looks like he's been wired in here throughout practice and qualifying. That 88 has a ton of speed there underneath the hood of that Red Bull Chevrolet. That 88's going to put a class on the field here tonight. It's going to look like.
Trying to open up a can of Red Bull and whoop bumper there in that 88 machine as you will lead the field to the green flag. We're live for the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com. And shooting out like a cannon right off the start was Rogers, and he is trying to check out early here on lap number 1. Focusado will take second away. And it is a pretty good battle back in here for third. Stallhood, Bishop, and Conti all on top of one another for this third spot. And still...
Oh, Rich Roy around off of 2.
Roy going around off of turn number 2. The Roy family construction number 29 machine looks like it was just a single car spin. And your Sportsman Daytona winner from a couple of weeks ago spins around on the second lap of the race, and that is not the start of the race he wanted for that Millennium Autosport Roy construction machine. Some cars phasing in and out as Corbin Wentz right now caboosing this field along with Brendan Whitford. And that is not the start to the race that you wanted if you were Rich Roy in that 29 machine. Zach Rogers holding up a little bit, trying to conserve his tire wear. That's allowed Focusado to reel back in by just a little bit in that 37 car. RJ Bishop up to third. You got Blake Warren, who finished second in this race here a couple of months ago, up inside the top 5, running in fourth. Tyler Stallhood, real tight through the corner. Drew Fast is going to thread the needle between the 85 and the 7. Those two remain straight, and not a good start to the race for Stallhood as Ike Durbin trying to move underneath of that Pokemon number 7 machine. Durbin falling back in the Dark Matter Coffee 86. He got Dunlaprod, who started deep in the field after not putting down a qualifying run. Back up in here, it has been all that number 88 machine, Caleb.
Absolutely. Zach Rogers got a fantastic start to this race. Pretty much, like I said, shot out of a cannon there on that initial start. Was able to pull away quite easily there in the early stages there and build up a solid cushion. Focusado there in the 37. Still looking quick. There is that 37. Looking to maybe try and reel that 88 in a little bit. But honestly, yeah, I think that 88 of Rogers maybe right now is kind of just getting into the groove, maybe trying to save those tires a little bit. Looks like that 37 Focusado pushing absolutely to the max right now. Same probably for the 28. RJ Bishop having a solid run here so far in third. Blake Warren there in the 12 up into fourth. And definitely got to give a call to Dunlaprod there in the 74. Tyler Stallhood goes around.
Stallhood around in turns 3 and 4, I believe. No caution. That was another single car spin, but Stallhood, who started in fourth on the back end of the speedway. And another single car spin.
Fast.
Drew Fast is around in turn number 2. Did he get a little bit of help from behind? He did not. So 3 single car spins early on in this race. And that is not what you wanted to see, as Drew Fast was running in 6th. He will go to the boondocks there in the 4 car. So that's now 3 incidents we have got to review at the end of the race. Remember, all incidences will be reviewed after the conclusion of the race. RJ Bishop to second. Gone around Vincenzo Focusado. Now what can Focusado do in terms of the crossover? Caleb, I think he used up a lot of his stuff early on trying to keep pace with that 88, and that might cost him here as Drew Fast down the pit lane. A ton of front-end damage on that number 4 car.
Really tough break for all those guys that are going to win around there during that sequence, especially Drew Fast, who nosed in there to the outside wall. It's going to quite a bit of damage there, so a tough break there for him. But up towards the front, ooh, Tyler Stallhood just barrels.
Oh, there he goes. Nearly got clipped. He nearly clipped the front end of Bishop, who had to tap the brakes. Here comes Focusado. And again, these loose setups that everybody was racing in both practice and qualifying now coming to bite everybody in the rear end. It seems that's the second time Stallhood has gone around in turns 3 and 4. But still, no multi-car incidents, although that was our closest chance to a multi. And I got a good feeling that RJ Bishop might need a fresh pair of pants on this next pit stop, because good lord, he was about maybe 2 feet away from running right into the side of that 7 car.
It's definitely a pretty close one there. But another tough break there for Tyler Stahl, and a tough break there for, like you said, RJ Bishop, who almost got this one, probably had tapped the brakes there and probably cost some bit of time there to the 88 of Zach Rogers. But I mean, we saw in the Sportsman race a couple times this track can be kind of unforgiving. It can be a bit slippery at times, and especially like you said, with these potentially loose setups that these guys are running here, with it being an open setup race, could definitely cause for some moments like that. So a really tough break there in that stretch there for all those guys. Is Drew fast now in the 4. He's on fresh tires now, so that could definitely be a really interesting for these guys up here.
We'll have to see how much of this fall off we can see here as Fast trying to catch back up. He is currently listed at 2 laps down, trying to get one of those laps back here and trying to catch back up. Right now, it is a 3-car battle for second place. That's right now being led by that snap-on number 28 as the field will navigate their way around lap traffic. Tyler Stallhood back out, Rich Roy up into the outside wall, and Fast trying to split the 37 and the 12. Thinks better of it, gonna get a nice run off the outside corner in the 4 machine. Trying to go down to the inside of Blake Warren, and Warren on the outside is gonna get a nice run off of turn 4. A little too nice of a run. Pancakes the outside wall off of 4 and loses all the momentum he was trying to drive up on the outside of that number 37 Momo Mazda. Zach Rogers on a nice Wednesday evening drive in Sin City. A comfortable 2.5 lead over RJ Bishop in the opening 14 laps of this contest, and hasn't been a chaos-free 14 laps, but has been a caution-free 14 laps. Much like we saw in the opening couple of stages. The opening half of that race in Mid-Ohio 1 week ago, of course, caution came out right at the midway point, and as they say, it was pretty much history after that. So much happening. An instant classic at Mid-Ohio, to say the least, Caleb.
Absolutely. After that halfway caution there that we got, that second half of the race was just absolute pure cinema there to close out that race in Mid-Ohio. And like I said, after some crazy moments, some great racing, and a great battle to end it off there, that was just an absolutely fantastic race. And so far, definitely been a very interesting race here from Vegas. We've had a couple of incidents here to start out this race. Like I said, though, have gone caution-free so far up to this point. Have not gone incident-free, so I'll have to see how the rest of this race ends up playing out, but it's definitely been a very interesting one here so far. Yeah, I'll definitely tell you what, that 88 is Zach Rogers absolutely dialed in here right now. I definitely do think he was saving those tires there during that early run, because the cars that were chasing him starting to maybe fall off a little bit is RJ Bishop and Vincenzo Focusato, as that 88 of Zach Rogers continues to cruise here around this racetrack.
He's gotten around the 39 of Tim Gallade Jr., and Drew Fast has gotten around the second and third place drivers. Bishop and Focusato continue to dogfight side by side. Brandon Whitford will now go a lap down. Trek Togger next up on the chopping block, and we are having some lagging issues here. I'm going to take down the ticker and see if that helps at all with the lagging issue, with the encoding issues, and if it doesn't, we'll drop down the bit rate just a little bit here. Again, there's not a whole lot I can do in terms of the encoder. I hope to be getting a new computer later on in this month, and that is not helping encoding. I think that might be hindering it even a little bit more. So next break in action, we'll bump down the bit rate so everybody will have a nice and smooth broadcast as Warren goes underneath of Tim Gallade Jr. Same thing with Dunlop Rod has crept his way inside the top 10, trying to get around Nicky Conti for that 5th spot, and he will. Conti will drop back down to 6th.
Prod's done a really good job here so far in this race, moving on up through the field. Of course, started at the back, did not set a time in qualifying, and even though everyone has spread out quite a bit, LaProd's still making moves now up into the position. Now trying to potentially set his sights here on the 12 of Blake Warren for 4th. That 74 can maybe get up there, and maybe if we get something like a caution that bunches everybody back up, 74 Dunn LeBron might definitely be a guy to watch out for.
He was strong in the sportsman race a month and a half ago, and same thing with Blake Warren, who has gotten a Las Vegas stripe or two. LeProd right on the tail end of that 12 car. They'll be side by side, and LeProd will get that position past Blake. Warren in a new number 12 car, debuted that last week at Mid-Ohio. Got the Ryan Blaney scheme here for 2020, the rest of 2025 and the entirety of 2026. Three wide off of the corner. Focusato on the inside of a dangerous position there between a couple of lap cars. That was Trek Togger and the aforementioned Drew Fast. In a little bit of a pickle there, but he was able to get out of it, and things have died down. That was the most action we have seen all afternoon, so all evening so far. Fast loose out of the corner. We'll do a couple of 360s, bumps back down the racetrack. Everybody look out. And Fast was able to jump off of the racetrack, I believe. And that was close. And that'll be the end of the evening for Drew Fast, who immediately jumped off the racetrack, retired from the race, and that is definitely a great thing to do, but not without a penalty there, as Fast will fall all the way down to 15th, and he will join Corbin Wentz in the garage area. 14 cars remain on track, and that was a great service out of Drew Fast, but it's going to come at an unfortunate cost, Caleb.
Definitely a really tough break there once again for Drew Fast. Not been the greatest race for him. Of course, he got involved in an accident earlier as well, of course, when he nosed there into the outside wall, and this unfortunate misfortune follows another one as there he got spun out there in 1 and 2. So a really tough night there for the Ford Drew Fast. Unfortunately, going to end there behind the wall. That's a really, really tough break there for him.
It's an unfortunate break there for Fast, who will finish this race in the 15th spot. Zach Rogers has led all 24 laps of this race so far. Dives underneath of Kenny Campos, puts that 06 car, that 006 car, 1 lap down.
LeProd now almost up to 3rd.
LeProd trying to get to the inside of Bishop there in that 28 machine as they go side by side down the back straightaway. LeProd has been dialed in. I don't think Bishop was in that sportsman race, so the experience for these sportsman drivers paying dividends to this race. Of course, Focusato had a good finish at the sportsman race. Same thing with both Conti and LeProd in the 74. Of course, Zach Rogers, even though he wasn't in that sportsman race, he was absolutely gunning here at a flat track like Las Vegas. And a track like this, it's your bread and butter. Not quite the bread and butter we see at the Super Speedway as Tim Galley down the pit lane. But still, pretty good race for Zach Rogers as Galley will come down. Same thing with the 28 of RJ Bishop. So we're seeing our opening set of pit stops here on lap number 27. A couple of cars coming down. There's Galley and that Tim Galley Racing number 39 machine. You talk about a small world here, Caleb. Tim Galley Jr., his father Tim Galley Sr., the owner and part-time driver of the Rise Motorsports number 31 ARCA team. I myself have helped out on that team quite some time. Of course, my younger brother Matthew, I'm not sure if he's watching the stream, but Matthew is the crew chief of that number 31 machine, and Tim Galley Jr. has helped out on that number 31 car all throughout these last couple of seasons here, whether it be the car Sugar that we had last year, the car Spice we have currently. And glad to see him back in the Fuel Racing League circles, and we're in a pretty decent race looking for a nice top 10 run, currently running in 12th. But now here we go, Blake Warren down the pit lane. We'll see if anybody else will join Warren. Kenny Campos will also come in. Ike Durbin will stay out. The main question is going to be, when does Zach Rogers come down, and when do drivers try and stay out? Second place battle heating up between LeProd and Focusato. Focusado under fire from that Hershey's number 74, a brand new livery this season for Dunlopron. Was originally going to be only ran as a throwback. But here he is running a really good race now in that 74, and he's right on the back end of that 37. A couple of throwbacks to the TM Master Cup Series days. Glad to see those two similar looking schemes dueling it out side by side. And Blake Warren having to come back down the pit lane.
Uh-oh.
I believe he may have got caught for speeding.
Man.
Trying to see if he indeed did. I believe it might be a speeding penalty for Blake Warren, and that'll unfortunately take him out of contention. He was running in 4th at the time, and that is not what you want to see for Warren. And his unfortunate luck here at Las Vegas will continue into the Grand National side of things. That'll essentially make this a 3-car battle for this race lead. Nicky Conti about 4 seconds back of the drivers 2nd and 3rd right now. LaPrade beginning to check out away from Focusado. And again, Rogers, no pressure out back, 3 seconds ahead of Dunn LaPrade, who has carved his way through the field. And I really don't think Dunn would have had to carve his way like a Thanksgiving turkey, because he was one of the cars that did not qualify on track. So had to start this race all the way back in the 16th spot. He's been able to make his way up to 2nd. Trying to do the last to first challenge here at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, but right now, Zach Rogers, who is letting off a little bit, he's still 3 seconds ahead of LaPrade. LaPrade gaining just a little bit on that 88 machine. I think these guys are going to try and do a full fuel run.
So that might indeed be the case, but yeah, that 74 slowly, just ever so slightly chipping away at the lead of that 88 to Zach Rogers. It might be letting up, like you said, to maybe try and get a full fuel run in here. I guess no pun intended, but have to see when everybody decides to come down here. Of course, we already had a couple cars come down there a couple laps ago. See the 60th Trek Togger there now coming down the pit lane.
Togger coming down the pit.
Interesting strategy.
Yeah, I think these guys just trying to run it to the very last drop. You take a look at the analysis. These guys can do about 35 to 36 laps max. So these guys are going to be running down to the very end on this fuel run. For the 3 leaders, the 4 leaders that have not yet come down the pit lane. RJ Bishop, you can hear that 28 car.
There we go.
Punching in the clutch, and here we go. LaPrade, Rogers, and Focusado, the 3 leaders, are down the pit lane. We'll see if Conti will follow suit. And Conti will indeed follow suit that last time by.
Yeah.
So Conti trying to jump these drivers on an earlier lap, and here comes Rogers. Conti will be put a lap down. Conti out of their pit box, and here comes Zach Rogers, and the Bulldog will make his opening pit stop of the evening.
It'll be interesting to see where the 28 of RJ Bishop's going to come out in all this, because, of course, he pitted a couple of laps ago, but he has gotten a lot of laps in now here on fresher tires.
He's going to wear out those tires quite a bit. Rogers out and away. We'll see where Bishop will come out. Bishop right now at the start-finish line. The 28, and Rogers is already on the access road in the apex of 1 and 2. So I think Rogers will retain this race lead. Bishop might snag 2nd away from LaPrade. He'll definitely take 3rd away from Focusado. Could he get 2nd away from that 74? He's going to have the run, but LaPrade will have the rubber. And you can hear that 28 machine punching in the clutch into the corners. You could hear it in turns 1 and 2, and you'll be able to hear it once again here. But LaPrade will remain in 2nd for the time being. And Bishop, yeah, you can hear that 28 machine very silent through the corner, punching in the clutch, trying to save as much fuel as possible And again, we were at the halfway point. Bishop came down, what was it, Caleb, about lap 31, 32?
Maybe even a little bit. I think it was around maybe like 27 or 28.
I don't know if he came down that early, because coming down that early, because we just passed the midway point at lap number 34, so these guys were waiting until halfway to come down. This is going to be very close for RJ, and you can hear him punching in the clutch. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it to the end.
Be close there for that 28. They've done LeProd, fastest lap of the race so far.
Right now running a 31.281 second lap. As we close in on 30 laps to go this time by. So Zach Rogers continues to lead the way here in Sin City, Las Vegas. It has been a quiet race so far. Rogers thought he was going to come back down the pit lane for some sort of speeding penalty there. So he was gingerly going underneath of the number 29 of Rich Roy. But nonetheless, it's time for a little bit of a snap-on race break, Caleb. So what do you say we go downstairs and go through the field, presented by Fram. Zach Rogers leads the way in car number 88. With Rich Roy in 10th, Brennan Whitford 11th, Dunlaprod runs in 2nd, 3rd is RJ Bishop, 4th is Vincenzo Focasato, 7th is Emmy Schizzato, 8th is Blake Warren, 5th is Nicky Conti, 12th Trek Togger, 14th is Tyler Stallhood, 9th is Kenny Campos, 6th is Ike Durbin, 13th is Tim Galley Jr., and that'll do it for your snap-on race break as we went through the field there, presented by Fram. 13 cars make that 14 cars still out on track. Of the 16 cars that started the race, Corbin Wentz and Drew Fast, the only retirees. Wentz 34 laps off for the pace, and Fast retired 14 laps later. Is 21 laps off of the pace in car number 4. Fastest lap, like we attested to, belonging to the number 74 car. The number 74 of Dunlaprod getting things done, trying to get things done as best as he can, but catching up to the back end of that number 88 machine, it's going to be a tall task. I'm not sure if he's going to have enough time to do so, but trying to get a nice points day after running into some issues a little bit later last week in the going at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. I'm trying to remember if Dunn was in that race at Mid-Ohio. I don't believe he was, so returning back to the grid here in that 74 machine. Bishop continuing to try and punch in the clutch to try and baby that 28 machine home. He's got 25 more laps to do so. But I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it to the end. You can hear Blake Warren also punching in the clutch in the 12. So he might be a little bit short to the end as well. So we could see, for at least a couple drivers outside of the podium, maybe not running, or maybe running out of fuel towards the end, Caleb.
Maybe definitely some interesting strategy, like I said, that we've been seeing, and definitely going to produce some interesting results. As you know, like you said, Bishop, Blake Warren, you can definitely hear both of them slamming in the clutcher as they go into the corners and just letting that car ride throughout the corner before getting back into the throttle. So yeah, just trying to save as much fuel as they possibly can while still trying to keep pace with all these other guys. And it'll be interesting to see if they can make it to the end. Like I said, trying to baby things home. We'll have to see if they can make it, but definitely going to be a tall task there for those guys. And another tall task definitely awaiting that 74 Dunlaprod as he continues to try and chip away at that 4-second lead. Currently amounted there by the 88 of Zach Rogers. 74 does look quick, but that 88 has a really, really big gap built up. Definitely take a lot there for LaPrade to close that gap. And of course, you know how the old saying goes, even if that 74 of LaPrade is able to catch up, it's one thing to catch somebody, it's a whole different ballpark to pass them.
Definitely is. Was able to close in on the 88 by a couple hundredths of a second, but Rogers has been as consistent as one can ask for, with 21 laps to go in the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com. Tyler Stallhood back down the pit lane. We saw him up into the outside wall a handful of times. Currently the last car on the racetrack in 14th, 4 laps down. He and Rich Roy right now in a last car battle. But it's that 88 machine. Again, you saw last week on the road course, him and Jelaine Sims duking it out. Jelaine got the better of him. Those two just in a complete battle all the way until the final corner of the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. But today, it has been complete domination so far out of the Bulldog. 47 laps led, including under the pit cycle. Zach Rogers trying to go wire to wire and dominate here at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway and continue to open up his points gap over the rest of the field. Again, 154 points ahead of Vincenzo Focusato coming into this afternoon. We got 3 wide back in here. J. Bishop has been caught up to by Emi Schizzato, as well as Conti, Warren, and Gallet Jr. We still have not had a caution here this afternoon, but we had some incidents early on in the race. Could we potentially see a yellow flag with these guys all on top of one another? Conti to the inside of Bishop, and that's going to potentially knock RJ outside of the top 5 if Ike Durbin is able to get up into this battle, as these guys are nose to tail through 3 and 4.
Definitely quite a big nest of cars here from 4th on the racetrack on back. Like you said, you got Conti up there, RJ Bishop, Schizzato, Blake Horn, and Rich Roy all up here in this battle, and definitely probably the biggest battle we've seen out here on the racetrack in quite a bit. So knock on wood, these guys can keep it clean, because I'll definitely tell you what, up front, it's definitely getting really interesting. Is Laprade, he's been able to close that gap. Now down to under 3 seconds is that 74. Been running some really consistent laps, just continuing to chip away at that race lead, and at a pretty decent pace as well. That 74 might start approaching the mirrors of that 88 relatively quickly if he could potentially keep this pace up.
Well, I think Rogers is biding his time and trying to save a little bit of wear on the tires, because again, like we said in that Mid-Ohio race last week, that was a caution fest at the end of the race when it was pretty much incident free throughout the entire first half. We've got 16 laps to go here. 15, excuse me. No, it is 16. We got 16 laps to go here at Las Vegas. You can't count out the chance of a caution. Gallet Jr. back down the pit area. Can't count out the chance of a caution. Can't count out the chance of somebody getting a tap from somebody. We've had a couple of incidents in this race so far, but overall, you want to leave a little bit in the tank if you're Rogers. And yeah, Laprade has closed in a ton, but Laprade throwing the entire kitchen sink of the back end of that 88. I think once we get to about 5 laps to go, or if that gap between Rogers and Laprade is about maybe a second, that's where Rogers will hit the afterburners and try to use up whatever stuff he was saving here. But Laprade right now running at breakneck speed down the inside. We'll see what the gap between the two will be this time by. I don't think it'll be anything too different. No, it's underneath the 2 seconds, so Laprade is definitely approaching the back end of the 88. When you have won and you have raced as many races as RJ Bishop, loose off of turn 4.
Oh.
He's going to be able to save it. He's back up the track. He goes sideways. Single car spin on the inside, and he's able to 360 it around without going back up into traffic. And that is not what you want for Bishop, and I think the fuel saving, unfortunately, failing a little bit there for RJ. And looks like he will go a lap down as Rogers and Laprade, that gap between the two stabilizing at a 2 3/4 that last time by. I think once we get to about maybe a second and a half, for about 5 laps to go, that's when Rogers is going to turn these jets back on here. And the gap now back to a 2 8/10.
74 might be wearing out those tires a little bit, been slowing down a little bit over these last couple laps. That 74 definitely looks like it's starting to get a little bit tight as these tires start to wear out. So yeah, I think that 88 of Rogers was just trying to abide by his time out front, while the 74 of LaPrade wore those tires out just a little bit more. And right now, it definitely looks like it might be starting to pay dividends. We'll see what the gap is this time around. Managed to come down a little bit, so LaPrade still might definitely have a lot of fight left in him. As those tires start to wear, it's going to be a lot more difficult for that 74.
We're just about at that 2.5 threshold like we were talking about. And I'm Rogers. You got 10 laps to go this next time by. I'd hit the Jets. I'd hit the afterburners. LaPrade has shown that he's utilizing a lot of his stuff to try to catch up to you. We got quite a few more cars coming down the pit lane again. Those were the drivers that mathematically could not make it to the end. And they pit before lap number 33. Kenny Campos and Tim Gallade Jr. back down the pit lane. That is the third time that we've seen Tim Gallade Jr. back down the pit lane here. So potentially some issues on that number 39. Once we know of anything, we will let you know. 4 cars on the lead lap right now as Ike Durbin has fallen off of the lead lap. 9 laps to go for Zach Rogers. And he's trying to get to that 5 lap to go mark. Before that is the point of no return.
Oh, Ike Durbin!
Durbin around in turns 1 and 2. Spinning that Dark Matter Coffee Mazda around. I think he got loose and he was running in 5th at the time, and that'll give a nice top 5 run to Emi Schizzato, it looks like. If Schizzato is able to get back up and around. Meanwhile, Rich Roy cutting across the front nose of Trek Togger. Those two will remain straight, and Schizzato trying to haul rear end to catch up to the back end of that number 86 car. 8 laps to go in Las Vegas for Zach Rogers. The gap now stabilizing at a 2.5, but LaPrade now just barely in frame. There's the gap between the Red Bull Camaro and the Hershey's Camaro. A couple of tasty Chevrolets right at the front of the field. 7 to go for Rogers. So he now closes up on the back end of Blake Warren, holds up a bit, and now that gap, whoa, Blake, got tight through the corner. Rogers up the hill in the 88. That's going to scrub a lot of speed off. Now the 74 and the 88 within the same frame of one another. The gap down to a 2.5 as Rogers. Yeah, Rod, you're just trying to get to that 5 lap to go threshold. And that'll be the end.
That was definitely maybe a bit of a close call there for Zach Rogers. Now LaPrade just over a second back in that 74. The times are continuing to slow down here as we get into the closing stages here of Las Vegas. And Zach Rogers, we know that 88 has probably been saving his stuff just a little bit. The question is, when does he turn on the jets? We'll have to see if that 88 maybe starts to try and pull away a little bit here now that the 74 has gotten too close to within a second.
Well, it's lap number 63. 5 laps to go. It's within a second for the first time all evening long. Zach Rogers has company within a second off of his rear end, but it's 5 laps to go, and we have any sort of multi-car incident now. Does not matter. We're green to the end. That's exactly what Zach Rogers wanted to see, and how about that for these drivers? Our first caution-free race of the season. It only took 7 races. But a nice caution-free race for a nice race so far. Now the gap down a couple hundredths of a second. It's down to 96 tenths. 96 hundredths, I should say. Rogers, little bit tight through the corner. LaPrade is giving everything he got. He is cracking the whip right on the rear end of that Hershey's machine, telling it to go, telling it to pull out of here. Coming around to 3 to go this time by.
74 still just being able to slowly, ever so surely chip into the lead of that 88 of Zach Rogers. He has done an absolutely fantastic job over the course of this race as a whole, not only making his way through the field, but running consistent laps, even with those worn tires. and LeProd now within a second of Zach Rogers. Rogers still has at least a decent amount of cushion back out of the 74 of LeProd, but we're getting down to it here. We got 2 laps to go. Can LeProd catch him? I don't know. He still might be a little far back, but we've seen anything can happen here.
0.8 of a second, sticks in the air, 2 laps to go, lap traffic in the way of Rogers. Togger on the outside of the 88 will move over for the Red Bull Camry. Lap and a half to go here in Sin City, Las Vegas. It has not been as wild of a race as we thought it was going to be, Caleb, but it has been a race about dominance. 65 laps led so far tonight. Rogers coming around turns 3 and 4 for the penultimate time. He will see the white flag in the air one more time around the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for Zach Rogers. That was his 66th lap led this evening. Emi Schizzato will give way on the outside of the number 9 target machine. LeProd still within a second of the 88, but is going to need a miracle to lead that final lap, but I don't think he's going to get it. Through turns 3 and 4 for the final time, putting wire to wire in the literal sense, and off turn 4, Zach Rogers leads them all, and he wins in Sin City.
And the 88 wins it by 88 of a second.
A fantastic job, a completely dominating job there for Zach Rogers, who leads all 67 laps of tonight's contest here in Las Vegas. And I don't think I have seen a more dominant race like that in quite some time, Caleb. And we thought this race was going to be crazy, and it was not as crazy as we thought it was going to be. Just sheer rear end kicking there out of Zach Rogers, and the Bulldog burning it down. He's back. He's back in victory lane for the 6th time this season. And the run that he has been on, the run Team Velocity has been on, has been nothing short of incredible. And he wins here this evening in dominating fashion, leads every single lap to win here in Las Vegas, as we get a look at everybody and their finishing results of the 16 cars that were on track. Caleb, what a race and what a domination fest for Zach Rogers.
What a performance there out of the 88 of Zach Rogers there, leading from wire to wire pretty much. That was just absolute. That was one of the best runs you could possibly ask for any kind of driver, and that was just honestly, like, that was probably as close as you could probably get to perfect there for Rogers there. And that 88 just continued laying down perfect, consistent laps here all throughout this race. And even with their late challenge from the 74 of Dunn LeProd, able to hold him off there, and definitely have to give a call there to LeProd as well, starting from the back of the field and just coming up 88 tenths short there on the checkered flag. That is definitely a fantastic performance there out of LeProd as well there. And that 74 gave it his absolute all. So just absolute domination here tonight out of that 88 of Zach Rogers. And what a way to return to victory lane.
Definitely was just absolutely kicking tail there as we take a look at the official standings. Zach Rogers, Dunn LeProd, and Vincenzo Focasato will be the 3 drivers we will hear from. Nicky Conti and Ike Durbin rounded out the top 5. Durbin was the first car off of the lead lap. Only 4 cars finished this race on the lead lap. Durbin was 2 laps down. Emi Schizzato, RJ Bishop, Blake Warren, Trek Togger, and Kenny Compost the top 10. Rich Roy, Brendan Whitford, Tyler Stallhood, Tim Galley Jr. rounded out the 14 cars still out on track. Drew Fast and Corbin Wentz rounded out the field. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back here in just a couple of moments' time for the post-race interviews. We'll hear from all 3 winners, all 3 podium finishers of this race here in just a couple of moments. But a caution-free domination fest. Zach Rogers has won the 2025 Desert Derby presented by Pets.com. We'll be back here for the post-race interviews in just a couple moments. And we are back at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, concluding a dominating and a quick race for the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com for race number 7 of the 2025 season, or the seventh season of the Fuel Grand National Series. Trey Wright and Caleb Rose on the call as we are gotten into our post-race interview portion of the evening, and we'll start off with Vincenzo Focasato, who finished in third in just a couple of moments' time. But Caleb, initial thoughts on the end of this race? An absolute domination fest out of Zach Rogers, leading every single lap of the night.
Definitely a very interesting race here from Las Vegas. Definitely had quite a bit of chaos there in the early stages of the race, and quite a bit there in kind of the later stages as well. There's started to wrap things up, but still managed to go caution-free there throughout the entire thing and open the door for an absolute domination there out of the 88 as Zach Rogers put up an absolute clinic there on the field. And of course, like I said, a great effort there from the 74 back of the field all the way to second place, and within a second of the 88 at Rogers. Definitely gave him a run for his money there towards the end, but Rogers just able to hang on there at the end and complete the absolute domination that was there. But what an interesting race here from Las Vegas, I can definitely tell you that.
It definitely was interesting. We'll hear from Zach Rogers a little bit later on. But starting on with our third place driver of the evening, driver of the number 37 Momo Mazda, Vincenzo Focasato. Got a copy of us here in the broadcast booth?
Reads loud and clear, Trey.
Well, you had quite an eventful evening here tonight, finishing in third after qualifying in second, if I'm not mistaken, and you were able to get the job done for a nice podium finish here this evening, but it seemed like literally everybody was following in the tire tracks of the number 88 machine.
Yeah, for sure. I know Dunn closed the very large gap that he had. I didn't realize till a few moments ago that he started last, so that's a crazy run through the field that he had. But him and Zach were definitely the cars to beat. They were outrageously fast, and I admit I got my hopes up just a little bit that tire wear might allow me to catch up, might put a ceiling on how fast he could go, but by the time we got to the first pit stops, I think he was like a third of a lap ahead. So at that point, I brought back down to earth and just tried to finish cleanly and see how well I could do.
And you were able to have a nice and clean race here this evening, but you raced in the Sportsman race about a month and a half ago, and it seemed like two totally different races. And what's the biggest difference between racing a Sportsman car here and racing a Grand National car with a lot more horsepower and a completely open setup?
Yeah, the Sportsman setup specifically when we were here was a little slower, a little tighter. It was pretty easy to overdrive, and you had to really discipline yourself all the way through mid-corner. You had to wait really late to get back in the gas, and I think that lended itself to the extraordinarily dicey racing we had there. But like you said, with the open setup tonight, we didn't have to limit ourselves to being quite as stable, and I think a lot of people freed up their rear ends so they could really punch it off the corner. So we weren't quite as bunched up together as we were for then. I guess that's all the insight I can provide. I'm not super great with stuff like that, but it made for a more strung out race, but not for one that couldn't stop people from passing. I don't think we were side by side as often, at least not in the top 10 that I saw, but people seemed to catch up and fall back pretty abruptly and at high rates. So you could get by someone, pull ahead of them 3 seconds, and then 2 laps later, they'd be flying right back by you, and it felt like that happened a few times. It was a really fun first half of the race with all that going on with RJ and Drew and Blake and everybody.
It definitely was, and hey, our first caution-free race of the season. And I doubt we're going to get a caution-free race next week at Talladega for the Ash Industries Silver Screen Showdown. That guy coming at you later on October 15th. But final thing before we'll let Caleb have the floor here. You're in second in the point standings. You were able to finish a couple positions ahead of Nicky Conti. I think Conti was able to finish in the 4th spot, so a position ahead of Conti. So you're able to stay ahead of her in terms of the championship fight. What are you looking for at Talladega? Just trying to survive?
I'll be honest, Talladega is just a track that you don't really have the opportunity to approach with points in mind. You can try, but we all know Talladega. So, um, I don't know. I guess that's not really on my mind for next week. Super speedways have been a lot of fun, open setup in this series, so I'm just looking forward to it, seeing what we can all do. Last year was a fun race, so hopefully this year produces another enjoyable show.
Should be a heck of a show at Talladega next week. Here, more on that later on. But Caleb, you got anything for our third place winner, third place finisher here tonight?
Well, definitely got to say that was a very, very good race there from Vegas, and a great performance there out of you as well. Had a great first run there, and even after the cycle of pit stops, so able to keep it clean there, and I'm on there with a third place finish. Definitely nothing to scoff at there, and definitely going to be intriguing to see how the points will shake out after this, and especially heading in to the next race at Talladega. That's definitely going to be a very, very interesting one to say the least. So I wish you the absolute best of luck going into the next weekend and these final couple races of the season, man.
Yeah, for sure, and I really appreciate it. However it turns out, it's going to be a good time. So, yeah, 7 days time. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Caleb, and thank you both.
Yeah, definitely going to be a heck of a race. Like we said, more on that later on towards the end of the broadcast. But Vincenzo will now give you the floor to shout out any sponsors you want here on the NESRN Airwaves. Anybody you want to thank, the floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, been having a great time, as always, the whole year through with all my friends from Team EFR, if you will. Great racing again to Rich, Ike, Nikki, Trek, Dunn. These guys mean a lot to me, and they are a joy to race with on the track each week that they show up. So thank you all again for another fun night. Same with everyone else who raced me. Same with RJ, with Blake, with Drew. I'm real sorry for you, Drew, that it didn't turn out the way you deserved. You deserved a really good finish out of that. And with Zach, of course, even though I never got a chance to battle him. Shout out to anyone who's watching, if Andrew or Cameron are watching, if Dad or Gail are watching, and to Tyler for running the show, and for you two for running the broadcast. All makes for a great time, so thank you all for playing your parts.
It definitely makes for a great time, and you had a great time here this evening. Vincenzo Focusado, thank you so much for coming to the broadcast booth for post-race, and we'll see you next week down in outside of Birmingham, Alabama, the Talladega Super Speedway. That's going to be one hell of a night in Talladega Boulevard.
You betcha. But yeah, thank you both once more.
User was moved out of your channel.
That was Vincenzo Focusado, driver of the number 37 Momo Mazda 4 Millennium Autosport. And now we will go to our second place finisher driver.
User was moved to your channel.
Of the number 74 Hershey's Chevrolet Camaro. Don LaPrade, you got a copy of us here in the broadcast booth?
Yes, I do.
Well, up until the 11th hour of the race, we weren't even sure if you were going to come on, and you were one of the 5 cars that did not put down a qualifying lap, and based on your number, you were forced to start all the way at the end. You were one position shy of completing the last to first challenge, but man, you gave a heck of a fight to Zach Rogers right at the end of that one.
Yeah, I skill issued in qualifying, so I just said screw it. I'm just gonna start dead last and try to work on my race setup a little bit instead and go on with it during the race. And I have a really good setup that was really superior on the long run. So I did not change a whole lot when I made my pit stop. I just changed up one click on 2 things, and it made the car just a little bit better in the second half, and was able to get right up there to Zach, but it wasn't not enough.
Yeah, you were just missing a little bit there on the back end of the 88, but still a really good points day for you. But you were one of the few drivers on the grid that raced in the Sportsman race here about a month and a half ago, and these two races had pretty different vibes. You had the complete parody of the Sportsman race and the absolute domination out of the 88 camp, What were the biggest differences between those two races in your opinion?
Well, one was fixed and one was open setup, so that's makes it kind of makes the field spread out pretty significantly there, as far as what you got and what you mess with, what makes you fast, what makes you slow, and all of that. And um, yeah, that was the biggest difference. I wasn't in that sportsman race, but I just know that obviously with open setups, you can do pretty much do whatever. With fix, you can't do anything other than change the steering ratio and all of that. But yeah, just the same old thing, as far as Las Vegas, Paris track. Just only difference is fix and open setup.
Definitely was, and the open setup definitely proved its worth here tonight with you guys having a little bit more experience towards the front end of the field. But next week, we're going to a track where it doesn't take a whole lot of experience to do well. The Talladega Superspeedway for the Ash Industries Silver Screen Showdown. As a driver for these plate tracks, is there anything you can do to prepare, or is it just up to the racing gods and you being able to read the draft?
Just survive. That's practically it. Just luck of the draw. That's what I've always told myself. And when I enter these super speedway races, you either come out a hero or a zero. There's really no skill involved, or well, not that there's no skill. It's just super speedways are basically like oriented tracks, and I mean, you can have a really really good driver that's really good everywhere and get caught up in somebody else's mess a day ago than someone who uh, normally doesn't race up front has everywhere has a chance to win at a super speedway. So uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll be there next week. Probably not. I'm not too much into super speedway racing as much as I used to. Just have to wait and see, but hopefully it will be a good race for everybody that will attend to that race, regardless.
Well, hopefully we'll see you next week, either up or either in the YouTube chat or on track. But Caleb, you got anything for our second place finisher in tonight's contest?
Well, definitely have to say that was a fantastic race and a fantastic performance out of you tonight. Like you're kind of touching on, going there from last all the way up there to second place, and even running down that 88 of Zach Rogers there towards the end of the race. That was an absolutely spectacular showing there out of you tonight. And of course, I definitely have to ask. Of course, we definitely got to go down that route. Of course, you were closing in pretty quickly there, and towards the end, got there within a second. If there was maybe a couple more laps, do you think you could have maybe ran down the 88 and passed him, or do you think things might have not played out so differently?
No, I had worn out my tires at that point. There were like a couple of moments early in that, especially in that first run before the pit stops, where there was like 2 or 3 drivers that spun right in front of me, and I had to slow down a little bit to take evasive action to prevent uh, not hit them, of course. And I think that ultimately made a difference. And also, I think if I had pitted a lap earlier than Zach, I think that would have made a difference as well. Obviously, I think Zach would have had the advantage of having fresher tires about a lap. But with how it is, I mean, one lap it makes all the difference as far as whether you pit or whether you don't pit, and that certainly makes a difference in a lot of these races we go to that are very dependent on whether how long you stay out and when you need to pit, and depending on how bad the tires were and all of that. So yeah, I mean, if certain things didn't happen early in the first half, I think me having a skill issue in qualifying, I think it probably could have made a difference.
Well, you were able
I
to.
have to say that was a fantastic showing. Like I said, going from the last there to second and closing in there in the late stages to that 88 of Rogers. So I definitely just have to say, great job out there tonight, my man. that was a fantastic showing.
You put on one heck of a show right at the end. Couldn't quite get it done, but still finishing with a nice second place run. Dunn will give you the floor to shout out any sponsors you want. Anybody you want to thank here on the ASRN airwaves, the floor is yours.
Well, shout out first and foremost, shout out to you and Caleb for doing the broadcast. Shout out to everyone watching at home. I hope all of y'all, had a fun time watching this race. Shout out to Zach. Congratulations to him on winning the race. Shout out to Tyler Stallhood for the league. Shout out to all the admins that are involved. Shout out to everyone that races in this league. And shout out to everyone that has made me a better driver.
You're definitely one of the best drivers on track here tonight. A P2 finish for you, Dunn. Congratulations. And hopefully we'll see you next week at Talladega. But if we don't, we'll see you up at Pikes Peak in 2 weeks.
Yep. Thank you all.
User was moved out of your channel.
That was Dunn LaPrade, driver of the number 74 Hershey's Chevrolet Camaro for LaPrade Motorsports, and finally bringing in the race winner
User was moved to your channel.
of tonight's race in dominating fashion. He's back in victory lane for the first time in 2 weeks. Number 88 machine of Zach Rogers. You got a copy of us here in the broadcast booth?
I sure do.
Well, if last week was a little bit of a hiccup at Mid-Ohio, you made an absolute statement here tonight by literally going wire to wire and leading all 67 laps of tonight's race, and you were able to dominate here. But first and foremost, what does it feel like to absolutely stomp the field like that and lead every single lap in a highly competitive field like this?
I don't know if I'd call it highly competitive. I mean, the only one there was Dunn, and about everyone was 2 or 3 laps down, except I think the top 4. But it's competitive to a degree. It was a nice chill race from the drop of the green. Got a really good launch, and the margin at the start finish line after lap 1 was like 1.0, and I think Vincenzo got it down to like 7/10 or so there, and that was like the closest anyone ever was. But Dunn definitely had some good long run pace, and yeah, it wasn't too much of a hiccup last week. We just kind of got wrecked. Can't really control that.
Yeah, and it was almost coming down to the end there between you and Dunn LaPrade, as LaPrade was closing in by about a couple tenths of a second every lap, but were able to hold on in dominating fashion here tonight. Now, was the 74 car hard charging? Were you trying to save your rubber until the end in case maybe some shenanigans at the end like we saw at Mid-Ohio, or do you think it was just good, clean racing between you guys?
If there were any yellows after we had run 10 laps, it would have been 4 tires and adjustments, so there wouldn't have been any staying out. I was saving him a little bit because I could tell that he was starting to push. Like, he started pushing earlier than I would have, and once I decided to push it just that little bit that I had, my setup really wears off the right rear, so I have to take it easy for most of the run, and then at the end of the run I can push it a little more in the center because I have right front that I can use. So that's what I was doing there about the last 10 laps, just like burning the right front off a little bit to where it was going to start to get even with the right rear. And that was when you saw the gap kind of start to stabilize. It was like around 1.5 seconds or so. And then I had to completely change my line because a lap car decided he was saving fuel, and he must have just not been told by his spotter that I was coming up on him. And that cost me about 0.3 or so, and Dunn got it down to about 0.9, and it stabilized again. So I was actually talking to Dunn. I was like, man, if you had qualified better, you probably might have been in front of me at the end of that race there. I don't know. It looked like he had a better long run setup. He was saving a little bit more in the beginning, and then he was just that little bit faster at the end.
It definitely was, and you guys having a nice battle to the end there, but a dominating win for you this evening. Next week at Talladega, not sure if that's going to be as dominating for the Ash Industries Silver Screen Showdown. What, as a driver of your caliber, what can you do to possibly prepare for these wildcard super speedway races, if anything?
You can't really do anything. I've got a setup, and I'll probably qualify top 3 or so, and do my best to stay at the front. But I don't expect many people to be drafting with me next week. I can tell you that. So the goal is to just not do anything dumb. You won't see me block for the win if I'm in the lead at the end. I'm just going to try to get a solid top 5 next week. We've got, I think it's basically a 200-point lead by now. I think maybe over Vincenzo or whoever it is that's second in the points. Should be Vincenzo, I would think.
It is
So
Vincenzo.
all I really got to do is get through Talladega without losing much to him, and then get through Pikes Peak without losing anything to him, and we should clinch it at Pikes Peak. So
Looking to be the name of the game and trying to clinch it 2 races early. Nothing to really hate about
did it last
that.
year.
Indeed you did. Caleb, you got anything for our race winner here tonight?
Well, definitely got to say that was absolute domination out of you tonight, especially coming after that race there in Mid-Ohio. It was definitely a very, very great performance there. What a performance to return to victory lane in, and definitely going to be really interesting, like I said, to see how this shakes up the point. Definitely got to wish you the best of luck here in these next couple races. Of course, like you mentioned, you got Talladega coming up next. That's definitely going to be an interesting one there. So definitely wish you the best of luck for that. And best of luck for Pikes Peak as well. Have to see if you can look up the championship early. And I just wish you best of luck there in that endeavor.
Doesn't even have a question for me. He's just wishing me good luck. What a guy.
Well, I got another question for you, Zach. Yeah, anybody you want to shout out here on the broadcast? Any sponsors you want to thank? The floor is yours, my man.
First, I'd like to shout out my teammate, Jolene Sims. She couldn't be here tonight, but I'm sure she was watching if she could. And great teammate. And, if I didn't have her as a teammate, Team Velocity wouldn't be undefeated right now. So we're still kicking ass, even if it's her or me, So we'll see what we can do next week. I think the streak might end next week. Talladega is pretty unpredictable. And like I said, I'm not going to have any friends most likely next week. So, that's okay. We can let one of the other teams get one win this season. And but yeah, shout out to you guys on the broadcast. Shout out to my painter Cody Lamas on the paint schemes. Shout out to Tyler, of course, on running the league. He didn't have a great night, but I know he gave it his best effort in the time that he had to make a setup, and he's slowly piecing together what he needs to do in practice. He's been doing a certain strategy here for a little while, and I think he's starting to see that he should maybe try something else and see if that strategy works better for him as far as how he builds his setups. So I'm happy to give him tips and just throw stuff at him, even if he doesn't take it when he asks for it or if he's talking about it. So I can't thank him enough for putting the league on. And, without him, I wouldn't have gotten to, come out here, race this great league, and wouldn't have all these championships and be looking to add another one.
Definitely looking to be the favorite to win the championship going into the final couple of races here, the 7th season of Fuel Competition. Well, Zach, once again, glad to have you all here on the post-race show. We'll see you next week down in Talladega for what is certain to be a fantastic and very, very interesting race at the Talladega Superspeedway. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, should be fun. Have a good one.
User was moved out of your channel.
That was Zach Rogers, driver of the number 88 Red Bull Team Velocity Chevrolet Camaro, here for tonight's race. And your winner of tonight's race for the Desert Derby presented by Pets.com. And what an end to this race that we had here, Caleb. Not the flashy end, the duel that we saw at the end of the race that we had last week at the Mid-Ohio Raceway, but still a very, very, very great race here and a dominating race out of Zach Rogers, leading all 100 miles, I should say, to win here. Final thoughts on tonight's race.
Like I said, that was a absolute dominating show there at the 88 of Zach Rogers, leading there from wire to wire. That definitely a fantastic way there to return to victory lane there for Zach Rogers. It's some great momentum here as we head to the final couple races of the season, looking to try and clinch that championship early. And like I said, wish him nothing but the best of luck there in that endeavor. But next time out, like you said, going to be at the Talladega Super Speedway. Of course, a track that needs just absolutely no introduction. It's Dega. We all know how that track can be. We know how unpredictable it can be. So that's definitely going to be a very interesting race next time out. But as for here in Sin City, a very interesting race. Caution free, definitely a bit of a surprise there, but can't complain about that. Nice to sometimes see a race go green there from flag to flag. But a very fun race, all things considered, though, here from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And definitely looking forward to seeing what these next couple races will have in store.
It definitely is going to be interesting as we'll once again do a top down of the official standings. Zach Rogers winning the race by a final margin of 0.8 of a second, nearly 0.9 of a second over Dunlop Prod, who finishes in second. Vincenzo Focusato, who we also heard from, finishes in third. Nicky Conti and Ike Durbin, fourth and fifth. Sixth was Emmy Schizzato. Seventh, RJ Bishop. Eighth, Blake Warren. Ninth, Trek Togger. And rounding out the top 10 was Kenny Campos. 11th, Rich Roy. 12th, Brendan Whitford. 13th, Tyler Stallhood, who would like to wish both him and his wife a happy anniversary here this evening. Finishing 13th on the grid was Stallhood. 14th was Tim Galley Jr. Another shout out to the Rise Motorsports camp that'll be racing in Phoenix here in the next couple of weeks. Drew Fast rounded out the top 15, the first car out of the race, and Corbin Wentz finished in 16th here in that number 08 machine. And again, for Tyler Stallhood and all the guys putting on the Fuel Racing League, if you guys want to come on, if anybody's new that wants to get into NR and wants to get into a brand new NR league, got the link for the league Discord server down below here in the description. And same thing for if you want your online series broadcasted, send us a DM here for the North American Sim Racing Network. Discord, Twitter, and DMs are on there. Same thing with Twitter inquiries all the way down at the bottom of your screen in the description box. But that is going to do it here tonight from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Congratulations once again to Zach Rogers for going wire to wire and leading every single lap in tonight's race for the Pets.com Desert Derby here in Sin City, USA. We'll be back here in a week's time. The one and only the Talladega Super Speedway, the Ash Industries Silver Screen Showdown, coming at you on October 15th. Here on the North American Sim Racing Network. Pre-race begins at 8:55 Eastern Time, and the race will begin at around 9:15. As Caleb and I will have the coverage for that race here coming up next week. But on behalf of Tyler Stallhood, Caleb Rose, the entirety of the Fuel Racing League, and for the North American Sim Racing Network, my name is Trey Wright, saying so long from Las Vegas, USA. We'll see you next week in Talladega. Have a great evening, ladies and gentlemen.